thinking about commemorating, celebrating, appreciating Sealaska's 50-year history. It's not truly a 50-year history. We talk about what ANCSA is and why ANCSA is in existence. And the core of it is the 10,000 plus years our people have lived in Southeast Alaska. It also makes me think of the A&B A&S, another time period that's much longer than 50 years, starting in the early 1900s. Their work really was the birth of the Alaska Native corporations, of all of our native structures here that we have to support our Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian people, which encompassed in the English word collaboration, is the key element. We need the voice of our communities. We need the voice of our shareholders. We need the voice of our closest partners, Tlingit and Haida, our local tribes, our village corps, our communities, our community leaders. The relationship matters. The trust that you have in your partner is the beginning of collaboration. The canoe is what connected us. It's also a tool that keeps us together. A canoe not moving is very tippy. And when you're getting in, it feels very unstable. But the second you're paddling, you're pulling, and you feel the canoe moving, the canoe becomes stable. And you know you're moving together with each stroke, and you know that there's a commitment to a journey, a commitment to everybody in the canoe, and there's a trust that's built from that motion, from that commitment, and there's a connection to our ancient wisdom that occurs.
My dad served in World War II in Korea, and he came back and he picked up carving, and I used to watch him. That's where the spark came from. I always hung around the carvers. I was pushing brooms and mopping floors, and eventually they gave me a chance to paint, and I never looked back. Art, by its own definition, has a connection going way back to the beginning. It's the foundation of our whole culture. At some point in time, an ADS was created, and then the legacy of the Pacific Northwest Coast began. You went out and looked at a tree, and somewhere there's a paddle in there, and figured out how to make it. The Indigenous watercraft connection is a sure way to bring a culture back, and I've seen it time and time again. Nothing like a 2 or 3 foot chop to untie all the knots. Somewhere in there you're going to find out really quick you want to live. If you look in all the photographs that are left of the black and whites, all the dugouts were immaculate. And I think those standards have to come back. Working on my 15th dugout, and I'm still learning. Each one is its own project, but I have continued my pledge to give it my ultimate best, so that when these young people that are working on their paddles head out to sea, they're not going to have to worry about the failure of the boat. I know they're going to be safe, and that's a high standard to go by. You can think of the darkest days of the boarding schools, and the motto was kill the Indian to save the child. Called pagans, destroying the culture and the art and everything. But somebody thought it was important enough, even in those darkest times, to keep it going, because it made it. The damage that was caused is still being lived, but we're still here, we're still proud, we're still strong, we still can bring as best we can the art and the language back. It's worth saving. There's something in there that makes a lot more sense than everything else going on. And we should keep it alive. You see all those young eyes, and they're absorbing just so much. How hard that student works to make that center line on the paddle, because he can see himself paddling in that dugout that I'm working on. And being able to teach that, that's what keeps me going. It's good to see the interest and the support coming from the community. We had an elder just today wants to ride in the dugout. How cool is that, you know? Complete immersion into the culture and the arts will take care of you better than anything. It's foolproof, it's reliable, and it'll never let you down. We can't forget our past, but we can also start a new chapter.
We've been surveying our shareholders to tell us in their own words what they care about most, what benefits, what programs they care about and want to see Sealaska deliver and be a part of. Their shareholders have always had education at the top of the list, but I recall it was about 2018, and we had just surveyed our shareholder base, and number one on the list again was education, but language revitalization was number two on the list. It had actually jumped up. Culture and arts and language have always been intertwined, but there was a specific focus on language revitalization. And the concept that business success leads to shareholder success, leads to community success, is carried forward by listening to our shareholders. At that moment in time, we were creating some of the greatest net income that Sealaska has had in its history. And true to listening to our shareholders, we stood up a $10 million language revitalization fund that would support specifically fluency of advanced learners. The board wanted to really take action to reflect on the shareholder priority of language revitalization, but they wanted to do it in a way that fostered partnerships, collaboration, working together. And so that conversation led to that $10 million commitment, which provides $500,000 annually to the organizations and the people who are doing the real work.
As people who passed our knowledge down orally, language holds every aspect of who we are. We're at this place and time that we're losing fluent speakers that hold that knowledge faster than we're creating speakers. We're in a race. Sealaska Corporation and Klinka and Haida had the opportunity to meet with a small group of intermediate and advanced language learners from all three of our Southeast Indigenous languages, Xatqil, Ximalgix, and Tlingit, to hear directly from them what the gaps are in allowing them to become that next generation of fluent speakers. That time together discussing these barriers and opportunities is really where the Sealaska Increasing Fluency Project was born. The Increasing Fluency Project provide resources to 6 intermediate advanced language learners, 2 from each of our Indigenous languages, to meet the gaps and the barriers that they're experiencing in becoming fluent speakers. And that cohort of 6 have been provided the resources and means to create their own roadmap. It's not a prescribed, lesson or program that they're going through.
Each one of them are on a different journey. Some of them are working with elders. Some of them are looking at old recordings and transcripts. Some of them are creating resources to be able to teach in their communities. Some of them are working on things like social media to get it out there to be more accessible. We're working on this to think about creating new teachers. You focus on these 6 people, it doesn't seem like a lot, but when you think about these 6 potential teachers that we're working with, being able to connect with 10 or 20 kids more, that's potentially 60 to 80 students, and it just compounds over the years. That's the effort that we're working on. At this moment, language is the most important thing. It's not just words, it just connects us to all the different aspects of our culture. From our names, the games, the dances, songs. There's so much richness in our words that come from our people. The language is the DNA that connects it all. With this grant, we're creating 6 new fluent speakers, and then we're going to keep working on more, just keep growing.
The moment that Sealaska had the ability to start putting forward programs and benefits that our shareholders cared about, the elders, culture bearers, dance group leaders, community leaders, our clan leaders from our communities gathered in Sitka, and just a broad discussion amongst that leadership. What should Sealaska be doing to benefit our people? That moment sparked the simple understanding that we want all of our youth dancing. We want all of our youth speaking our language. We want all of our youth practicing our traditional customs, harvesting, being on the water. That concept of our youth having access to our culture started at that moment in time. We call it the Because We Cherish You moment. The Sealaska leadership at that point in time immediately stood up Sealaska Heritage Foundation, which is now Sealaska Heritage Institute. And the very first action that Sealaska Heritage Foundation took was to start Celebration.
Our dance group leader used to always tell us that when we're singing and dancing in these ways, when we're speaking our language, when we're in the A&B Hall, you have nothing but love and kindness in your heart. Once these old songs come in, it's like all the energy changes. You enter into a different energy space completely. When we're with our kids, teaching them about this history and culture, our kids are able to stand up straighter and stronger. They are learning more fully about who they are as humans. As they're going through conflict in their 20s, as they're going through conflict in their teenage years, they have this historical knowledge and this time together when they were at the A&B Hall with their aunties and uncles, supporting them and loving them and encouraging them to be who they are, and that who they are is enough, that who they are is beautiful and brilliant, and their intelligence is just being themselves. We're always trying to encourage leadership within our youth. Some young kids are teaching other younger kids. Young boys are learning to call the songs and dances at different times. Hearing some of the young girls decide to sing at different times and step up in leadership, it's amazing to see them become young leaders. The months leading up to Celebration here in Yakutat is exciting. It's very exciting for everybody. It's exciting for the community. There's beads flying everywhere. Everyone's got needles and aunties sitting around. We're performing in preparation. We're learning more about the history of the songs to make sure that we're singing them appropriately, that we have enough vocal strength to sing for the amount of time that we need to perform. And I'm just hoping that when people hear us, we can help to bring the medicine of our grandparents into those spaces through these old songs. I'm happy to support our dance group and being a catalyst to bring people together, but I have a hard time calling myself one of the leaders. To me, the leaders are elders. And in a very short amount of time, we were transitioning from just being young dancers to holding the enormous and wonderful burden of our dance group. History and culture and songs and dances. It's up to us to try to teach them the most appropriate way so that when they are echoing off the mountains of Mount St. Elias and Mount Fairweather, that they're recognized, our ancestors can recognize their songs. To see everybody dancing the same songs and dances as I remember singing and dancing as a small child in such a harmonious and beautiful way, I'm overwhelmed with emotion, grateful that we're even able to share this information, that we know it, we're called to it. This is just who we are as Tlingit people. It's something that binds us through the ages and to each other and to ourselves.
As we've been thinking about the 50th anniversary of ANCSA, the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, as we've been thinking through the 50-year history of Sealaska, it's really about the continuum, and it ties to Hashuka, the past, present, and future. That 50-year history inspires us to do the best we can today for our shareholders, but it really motivates and creates a responsibility to also plan for the next 50 years and the 50 years after that. And I think that's where the power of a moment like this can come from.